Hello, everyone. My name is Michael Hustis, and I serve as the chapter president of the Percussive Arts Society for the Texas chapter. And it's my privilege to introduce today's clinic that will be presented at TMEA in just a couple of weeks. Today's clinic is entitled Starting and Developing the 5 Core Skills of Young Drummers. Our 3 presenters today are Dr. Brad Meyer, who is a percussion educator, artist, and composer with an extensive and diverse background. Currently, Dr. Meyer is the Associate Professor of Percussion at Stephen F. Austin State University, where he is the private lesson teacher and director of the percussion ensemble. Robert Green is a percussion educator of 18 years and is currently the assistant band director and percussion specialist at Klein High School in Spring, Texas. He holds a degree in music education from Oklahoma State University and a master's degree in percussion performance from Middle Tennessee State. And finally, Andy Solomon. Andy is in his 23rd year as the percussion director of the Woodlands High School and McCullough Junior High School. During his tenure at the Woodlands, the marching band has been a consistent Bands of America Grand National finalist and a Grand National champion in 2013. So without any further ado, gentlemen.
I think we're going to start with me today doing important ideas in fundamental for grip. So starting off with the grip stuff, what I want to start with is there's 2 different ways I like to do this. The first one is setting the stick down and act like you're shaking hands with the stick. Boom. So like honestly, like what I'll do is I'll turn the stick around and go over to the kid and shake hands with the kid like that. But you can also do it this way where you set the stick down, boom, pick it up, and then from there all I do is boop, turn the hand over. Everything is in rightful place here on the hand. The fulcrum, front thumb, pad of the thumb, and the index finger. Back 3 fingers wrap around the stick. And the most important one too, I like to think of too, is keeping the garage door closed. And that'll help keep the stick in the right position in the hand. So when we open the hand here, it pushes the stick out into the extremities of the hand here. But we want to keep that all in contact right here when wrapped around. So the fingers are lightly wrapped around the stick, and then sometimes, occasionally, you'll have a kid with some different lengths of fingers and things like that, but sometimes the index finger likes to go underneath, and that's okay too as well. But a biggest concept of all this stuff is when you're dealing with this, the actual grip part of it, is that everything that happens at the tip of the stick is an extension of what happens here at the hand and at the wrist. And getting kids to think about that from the start is, to me, is one of the more important things. The second part of helping kids to jumpstart with the grip part here is to have them turn the stick around, holding in the same place here, okay? And then hitting the forearm and making sure that the stick goes straight up and down and stays connected. So if they're opening their fingers and having it in all different places, it's going to do weird things here. But that way you can ensure that the wrist and the stick and the stroke go straight up and down the forearm. And so when we turn it back around, that motion happens. So that's grip. And then the next part is we're doing, give me a second here, let me move my notes, is the different types of strokes. First one is a full stroke, and you'll see a graphic here. Starts at the top of the stroke, goes down and returns back up to the top. The next one is the downstroke, goes down and points down. And so you can think of it that way too as well. Downstrokes point down. The third stroke is the tap stroke, which starts in the down position, tap, and comes back up. And then the upstroke starts down and ends up. And so here, full stroke starts at the top, ends at the top. And the full stroke too can also start at different heights as well. But the other one, downstroke starts at the top, points down, or stops at the down position, pointing down to the instrument. And then the tap is at the down position and returns to the down position. And then we have the upstroke, starts in the down position, ends in the up position. Upstrokes also point up. So here, upstrokes point up, strike, and come back up. And those are the 4 basic strokes.
Awesome. I think my turn next. So I'm going to go over the doubles for you guys. First of all, when I'm starting with a double stroke, I want to make sure with a beginner student, I would probably just have them play with 2 full wrist strokes like this. As we're moving to the faster tempo, then we start to bounce the stick instead of wrist stroke. So we can see as we start to move faster that we start to let the stick rebound. Essentially, that's what a double is. It's letting the stick rebound, getting 2 strokes with 1 motion. So a lot of times when I'm starting this, I'll start with a triplet-based rhythm, kind of like an Irish type of rhythm, which is like 1, 2, 3. You guys will see that in your handout. So it goes a little, I'll play a little bit of this for you guys so you can just hear it. And what I want you guys to notice as I'm playing this exercise and I'm doing the double is that my hand is coming back up in between the double stroke. So it's kind of going like this, coming back into the up position. And that's really important for trying to get the second note of the double equal to the first note. So I'm going to start right on this doubles exercise. So this is in triplet time in 12/8. I'll go ahead and play a little bit of it for you guys. So. So what I'm trying to do as I'm playing this exercise is trying to really make sure that I'm using my wrist and my fingers help lift that second note out. You can even try taking the same rhythm and think about starting the first note low and making the second note high, so you can really try to bring out that second note. That's what's going to give us nice even doubles. Essentially, when we're playing doubles, we're playing rhythm. So when we're playing any kind of double stroke roll, even if it's a fast double stroke roll, it's essentially a rhythm that we're playing. The motion of the stick depends on the speed. So if we're playing a fast double stroke, then we're going to use more of an arm motion rather than more of a wrist motion. So it's similar to like a buzz roll. So like here's a 9-stroke roll with arm. So you can see how the motion changes from the wrist stroke into the arm stroke for the double stroke for that. I also work in more of like a duple. It's kind of a standard double beat exercise that I've written out, which is more of like 1E, 2, end up, E, and 4, and. And when I'm working with younger students, a lot of times I'm using not only a metronome, which I'll put on like a little groove with the drum set, but I'll also play with songs. So for example, I'll find a song that's in triplet time, like the Hey song, for example. I'll play along with that, so we really work on our tempo, our groove, and our double stroke all at the same time. So here's a little bit of the standard double beat exercise, and at the end it has a little bit of a breakdown with 16th note, 8th notes. So here's the double beat exercise. Ready? So I think the most important part of that exercise is actually probably the ending. And another way that I'll work on doubles, especially with any age, from all the way from 6th grade all the way to 12th grade, is we'll take double stops and work on just some basic doubles like at this tempo. So trying to get our wrist and finger and as I go faster, I'm going to change to more of an arm motion. So that's some basic doubles for teaching some younger students.
Hi, I'm Dr. Meyer. I teach at Stephen F. Austin State University. Want to thank Yamaha Percussion, Evans Drumheads, Vic Perth Sticks, Zildjian Cymbals, Tycoon Percussion, and Evans Drumheads. So what I'm going to be talking about today are buzz rolls, trying to get past that initial point that I find a lot of students and instructors have of understanding that a buzz roll is obviously a simple press of the stick into the drum, but getting beyond that and understanding how to make it better. So the first thing that I want everyone to look at is in the packet. You can see I have this graph of kind of how the bounces in a total buzz work, where the initial forte bounces decrescendo very quickly, but then the later softer bounces are very similar to each other. That's something we're really going to want to think about as we start talking about buzz rolls and the different types when it comes to loud and soft. So when I think of buzz rolls, I think of three major sliders, kind of like sliders on a mixing board. So the first slider is just going to be right hand to left hand evenness. So a great way to work on this is trying to, just like a slider, slowly move between right and left hand heaviness. So I'll start out right hand heavy, go to left, and then I'll try to find that mama bear, papa bear, baby bear, that perfect middle part. And so this is what that'll sound like. You can do this with your students. So that's the first slider, that's the evenness slider. The second slider is going to be pressure, or the bounces per second. And so the pressure going from light is going to have less bounces per second, and heavier pressure is going to have more bounces per second. Again, do the same thing. This time, try to keep the arm speed the same, but go from a very open bounce to a very closed, almost dead bounce. And it'll sound like this. Have your students do this so they can start to understand what different types of pressures are in their hands, so they can start working on experimenting with how to make their roll even. The last part is going to be the arm even. So what I try to do then is have them use just a pretty pressy buzz, pretty into the drum, and then I just have them slowly speed up and slow down so that they can understand the difference of how fast the arm should move. Again, the slower they can go, fast to slow, or from heavy press to light press, the better they're going to get at controlling how their buzzes sound and what they can do with creating a better buzz stroke. Next thing, let's talk about what's actually working in the hands. So with buzz strokes, the main thing is the grip point, which is going to be the thumb and first finger. The back fingers, while they're not going to be away from the stick this far, they are going to be slightly off the stick. So we want them to be close by so that when we're not playing bounce strokes or buzz strokes, that they're there for control. But for bounce strokes, we want the back three fingers, the third, fourth, and fifth fingers, to be just lightly away from the stick so that they're not deadening the stick and that we get a nice bounce. We don't want them to go out like that, because then the fingers aren't ready to come back when they need them for other types of motions. Next thing, think about what the arm and wrist are doing. So in buzz rolls, we want the arm to do a majority of the work, and then just the wrist to be relaxed and open enough that they're doing just a little bit of work to help the arm out. So mainly, arm stroke with a little wrist stroke should equal a nice full buzz sound. Next, let's talk about the difference between loud and soft rolls. So when it comes to two sliders, the pressure and the roll base, or the roll speed, we're going to think of them as inversely related, or opposites. So for loud rolls, we're going to have very quick arm strokes, but we're going to have very few strokes per bounces. And then for soft rolls, we're going to have less arm strokes, a slower overall roll rhythm, but we're going to have more bounces per hand. So for loud strokes, we're going to think fast arm, but we're going to think 3 or 4 bounces, and that'll sound like this. For softer rolls, we're going to think slower arm speed, but we're going to think more bounces per hand, and that'll sound like this. Now, one thing we want to think about is the edge to center usage for rolls and dynamics in general. I find that having the students play halfway from edge to center allows them to just stay there and play all their dynamics, so soft rolls, loud rolls, and really forces them to do the dynamics rather than using the drum to go from the edge, which is a little softer, than to the center, which can be a little louder, allowing them to be the thing or the person that's doing the dynamics, not the drum. Thing we want to do though is once we do have the student moving around the drum front and back, we want to make sure that they're following the line of the snare drum. We want them moving straight forward and back. We don't want them going to the side because this is not a marching snare drum, it's a concert snare drum that we're going to be playing on. And the snares on a marching snare drum run diagonally, whereas the snares on a concert snare will run front to back. Things to avoid. So the first thing is a glancing stroke. We don't want the stroke to come across the head because we're going to be getting different edge to center sounds. So just like any brass or woodwind, we don't want sounds to be inconsistent. So we're going to keep those sticks right next to each other with the beads right next to each other as close as possible, because when we've got one off center and one on center, it's going to be bapple, bapple, bapple. A little hard to hear on a pad, but when you apply that to a drum, you'll hear it. The next thing we want to do is avoid pressing the stick into the back of the hand. A lot of times when students are pressing into the drum, they're accidentally also pressing in the back of their palm, and that just stops the stick from rebounding. Instead, the palm needs to be off the stick as much as possible by allowing the fingers to be lightly away and the palm to be just slightly away, and that should help open up the sound versus pressing it into the back of the hand, which can really stop the stick from rebounding. The last thing is just having different approaches. A lot of times students with their dominant arm, you know, in my case it's my right arm, they'll go with a nice bounce from their arm, but their less dominant hand, they'll go all from the wrist. So you'll see a lot of, and students won't know why their roll is inconsistent, and so that's a big common issue that I see at the early stages as well. So let's talk about finding your roll base. We have some of the TMEA snare etude that we can talk about later if we want to, but for now we're not going to use that. So how to find your roll base is very simple. Find the tempo of the piece. So let's say that the tempo is 120. What you want to do is simply do a loud roll that sounds good, and then take out the buzz and find the bass. So like that, that's a fivelet. So for loud rolls, I might use a fivelet or sextuplet, depending on the level of student and how comfortable they are with those rhythms. And then same thing for soft rolls. So that's about a 16th note. So I would have the student go half tempo and then practice all their buzzes soft, like, you know, pianissimo to mezzo piano in the etude, with, and the louder rolls being either quintuplets or sextuplets, whatever they're comfortable with. And it's not going to sound good at that tempo, but what we're trying to do is prepare them so that their muscle memory is ready for being at tempo. Last couple things are, let's talk about a way to get in and out of rolls. So I find that a lot of students, when they release on a hand, whether that's right or left, they sometimes, if I'm trying to release on my left hand, they'll accidentally tap the last note of a roll on their right hand. So instead, have them overpress the roll, so that way they can really have their brain engage as to when the roll is being pressed through versus when that tap stroke is, and they're not getting some kind of opening up of the roll pressure or even a simple tap at the end. Lastly, I'd like to just show you a very quick exercise for developing something about rolls that I think is very common, which is the idea of rolls having a gap between the hands. So as you can hear, the hands are not connecting, so there's never a chance for them to become smooth in the end. So I just call this the overlapping roll exercise, where we kind of do a choo-choo train, slow to fast. We're going to start with the sticks on the head, and we're simply going to try to keep the sticks on the head as much as possible, and then just slowly speed up. Until they start to connect. It's not even, but it's connecting. And try to make sure that the sticks are staying on the head as much as possible. What we want to avoid is that. Instead, keeping that stick on the head so that they can continue to go faster and faster. Until they finally make a smooth roll. All right, back to Mr. Green.
So I'm going to cover flams, which this is can be a little intimidating for maybe a non-percussionist, but I'm going to try to make it as easy as possible. And so here, the most important thing when it comes to flams is letting kids understand that that grace note, that little tiny note that you see on the page, is more felt than heard. And like in my school, all my kids goes like, hey, grace notes are more felt than heard. And we say that all the time. And mostly it's so that they understand that there's a primary stroke and there's that ornament stroke. And it's that grace note is meant to ornament any primary stroke. And the same thing along with, I think it's Brad or Andy are going to sit there and talk about the drags. It is an ornamentation of a primary stroke. So it needs to be more felt by the listener than heard by the listener. And if it's heard, well, I mean, that's overcoming the primary stroke. It's becoming like the primary stroke. So you want to make sure that it is definitely more felt than heard. The other thing about that too is just, you know, the interpretation of flams. How do I interpret this? And I always start kids off like when in the beginning of 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. I just do it as a double stop. They play both simultaneously at the same time and try to keep it as tight as possible. We can talk about the openness or closedness based on the different types of style or whatever that is that's coming up after we've got mastery of just the basic playing it together at the same time. And so speaking of, the first thing that I do with my 6th grade students is we'll play full strokes, starting at the top of the stroke like this. We'll play full strokes together playing double stops. And this is just to get the coordination of both hands striking simultaneously, just getting them comfortable with that. This also helps me kind of see who's got the little hand maybe a little bit different here. But this gets them at least coordinated here, moving hands simultaneously. And we'll start at forte. So, and we'll just do this, like say, while some of the other students, I'll start the whole class like this. And I'll say, join me. All right, this is at forte, and then the next day we'll do it at mezzo forte, about 4 to 5 inches off the drum. And then the next day, mezzo piano, about 3 to 4 inches. And just getting used to this and how much of the back of the hand they're using and how much they're not using. And then the last day is at piano. Just being comfortable here, moving the sticks simultaneously from the playing position down to the drum. And so from there, we take that exercise until they're comfortable with it. And some days some move quicker than others. But what we'll do after that, once I feel like everybody has a good handle on that, we'll take that same concept and I'll leave a constant. And I'll tell the kids like, hey, the constant is going to be your left hand. And so we'll start at piano and your left hand is the constant. And your right hand's going to move to mezzo piano. So everything, we're still striking together at the same time. All right, now the right hand's going to move to mezzo forte. We still strike at the same time, just like we did before with the double stops. We're still playing full strokes in that right hand. And then forte. So I'll go through that sequence, and then we'll talk about adding. We'll just do it one at a time, each dynamic constantly, and then we'll talk about going all the way up and playing double stops all the way down, and how that works. And then we'll switch hands. Right hand becomes the constant. Left hand goes up and down at the various dynamics. Of course, that one's a little, for most kids, it takes a little longer, but that's the idea, to get them introduced to the concept. That's just like taking the double stop concept and then manipulating it. As you go through that. And so getting them comfortable with keeping one hand constant and the other one does the motion. Usually in 7th grade, I do more of the 2-height control stuff where we start connecting alternating flams to tap accent, because really when we're alternating our flams, each hand is playing tap accent. So a downstroke and then an upstroke, downstroke, upstroke, downstroke, upstroke, downstroke, upstroke, downstroke, upstroke. So when we do these, we're playing, essentially tap accent or a downstroke and an upstroke opposed to each other in each hand. And so we break that down usually in 7th grade because it's a little bit, their hands are a little bit stronger and they can handle more of the downstroke, upstroke stuff. And so once that gets into play and they can control those downstrokes and they understand what that upstroke is, that makes it a huge difference in being able to isolate more alternated hand-to-hand flams. And the last part of it, the more detailed part of it, is teaching kids how to play fake flams. And so, I mean, and I show them how to do these. I show them so I'll fake the primary stroke while they're playing so that they can see, and the whole idea is to gain control over that grace note of how loud it is and where am I placing it and what is the timing of it. And so that grace note, we'll do the exercise, and I've got it written in the packet here too. We'll play 4 regular flams, and then we'll play 4 fake flams. But this also helps them gain a lot more control over that primary stroke and where they place it. And so on, and then you can add that into if they're banging along with the fake flame stuff, they can add that into other rudiments and things like that. It'll help gain a lot of quality control to the low end, the low end taps of most of their tube height control stuff. But that's the essential for flams, is building them from double stops, then teaching manipulations of those full strokes all the way through right hand to left hand, and then isolation of the grace note in that second half, and then connecting it to 2 height control. So that's essentially flams.
So I'm going to go through some drags with you. Just like Mr. Green talked about with flams, a drag is an embellishment. So in other words, it's something that adds to the main note. So we've got the main note, and then we've got the drag, which adds to that main note. So it's kind of like sprinkles on a cupcake. You've got the main cake, you've got the icing, but those sprinkles add a little bit of extra. So it gives the sound of that main note something embellished or ornamented. There's a couple different types of drags. First of all, there's an open drag, which means that you're going to play a double stroke with whichever hand is playing the drag. So it would sound like dig-a-dut, so that would be an open drag. Okay, you also have a closed drag, which is where you take that ornament, whichever hand that you're playing, as the drag portion is going to be treated as a buzz. So, and when I think of the sound of a drag, I always think of the word Z-U-T, zut. So when I'm singing, I like to sing a lot of the etudes and have the students that I work with sing the etudes, and so we'll say zut, zut, digga zut. So that would be the sound that we use of the drag if we're using a closed drag. An open or closed drag depends on the type of music. It also can depend on personal preference. If you're playing something more of in a military style, you would probably want to play more of like an open type drag. If you were playing something maybe in more of an orchestral style, you may want to do a closed drag. So it just depends on the style of the music, and it kind of depends on personal preference and interpretation. So I wrote down a little breakdown, especially for the open drag. It's kind of learning how to play the ornament hand along with the main note. And I want to mention too, like similar to the flam, the low note of the drag is going to be about like 1/2 inch. So I almost think instead of like lifting it so much, I drop that hand. So it'd be like 1, 2, 3, real low on the drag. And then as you speed up, it becomes... So it becomes more, the da sound as you speed it up, and you also use what we talked about earlier, which was a double stroke, where we're letting that stick go and drop. We're doing one motion and creating two bounces. So these two topics go together very well. So I'm going to play just a little bit of this breakdown. Basically what I did was it goes from a slower rhythm to a faster rhythm. So for at the beginning, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Now switch hands, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1 and 2, 3 and 4, 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 1, 1. So that's the first part of the exercise, and you can start at a very slow tempo and just try to make sure that you're keeping the hand that's playing the drag as low as possible, and you're making the other hand the full stroke. And it depends on the dynamic that you're doing. If you're playing a drag at mezzo piano dynamic, you're obviously going to start that stroke a little bit lower than you would if you had a section that was at fortissimo. So I would recommend with this exercise and with any exercise starting very, very slowly and then speeding it up until it becomes very easy for you. And as Dr. Meyer said, it's really good to work on both hands. Obviously, we probably all have a particular hand that's our strong hand. Our other hand is not quite as strong. So for me, I'm more comfortable playing with left hand drags. So I have to work on spending time on my weak hand to make sure that I'm doing that equally as strong as I am doing with my strong hand. So the next section, I just broke it down with the drag. So once again, you can do it either open or closed. If you're doing open drag, you want to make sure that the drag is coming in prior to the main note. So if you have a metronome going, 1, 2, 3, 4, zut. So you want that zut part happening right before the beat. So I'll play the next section in open drag style. So this is measure 13. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, etc., etc. So I want to make sure you can practice that, like I said, in either closed drag. So. And you can also practice just making sure that you get that stroke nice and low with both hands. There's one more type of drag in this, or a ruff. Drag and ruff are used interchangeably. So there's another type that is called a 4-stroke ruff, and that's basically 3 soft notes with a main note. So 1, 2, 3, 1. So it's soft, 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 loud. And as we speed it up, we get more digga-da-da rhythm. Once again, you can start that with either hand. And the key with a 4-stroke ruff, especially if you're doing alternated sticking, there's different ways that you can play a 4-stroke ruff. You can play it with alternated sticking, which is the way I'm doing it right now. So this would be something like right, left, or left, right. So you want to make sure that the hand that's playing the first note, the second note, also becomes the loud note. So you want to make sure you're working on an upstroke and then a full stroke. So if you watch the left hand as I'm playing this 4-stroke ruff, I'll break it down, isolate it. You can see how it's doing an upstroke and then a full stroke. So I wrote out a little exercise that's kind of like the Adams theme song, if you've ever heard that. So it goes 1, 2, 3, 4 into 1, 2, 3, 4 into 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. Switch hands, 3, 4 into 1, 2, 3, 4 into 1. And you speed it up, 2, 3. So that's something that you can work on, and you can spend some time trying to develop your 4-stroke ruffs. Again, you can do it in different sticking combinations instead of left, right, or right, left. You can do a puttada, so right, right, or left, right, left. Either of those will work as well. So if you feel like the sticking in a particular etude or a particular piece calls for more of a puttada sticking, you can do that. So that's some basic information about drags and ruffs.
All right, Mr. Eustace, do you have anything that you would like to learn a little more about, or that the audience might like to learn a little more about?
Yeah, I have some questions that I researched on the Percussion Solutions for Band Directors page. So, um, what is a sequence of exercises that you would play like each day? So, if you're meeting, the winds are warming up, and maybe the percussionist can go into another room or something like that. Like, what would be a good sequence of exercises to maybe work on the stroke types and these 5 basic skill sets?
Robbie, you want to take that?
You cannot ever have enough of this sequence. Full stroke, downstroke, tap, upstroke, full stroke, downstroke, tap, upstroke, full, down, tap, up, full, down, tap, up, full, down, tap, up. The kids cannot get enough command over those 4 basic. The more command they have over those 4 basic strokes, and then being able, then you can take all of that information and their ability to do that, and then apply it to all the stuff that, like, I would start off with that from a daily basis if I could, and then adding the flam part of it to it, or drag part to it, all that kind of stuff. But that's a daily thing. You can't live without that.
Andrew, would you agree with that? And what about the double stroke aspect of the exercise?
Yeah, I would say I would agree with that completely. And what I would say is, like, basically all the rudiments that we have. It's a great clinic that I was able to watch many years ago from Brett Kuhn, who was one of my teachers at the Cavaliers. Basically breaking down all rudiments into loud strokes, soft strokes, doubles, and triples. So, I mean, I think that's where it starts. Is like, you got to understand how to control the stick with a full stroke, down stroke, tap stroke, up stroke, just like Mr. Green talked about, and also incorporating those doubles and triples, because you can break down even the most complex rudiment. You can break down into those basic strokes. So, it's when a lot of students come and they say, "Oh, I want to play this really complex rudiment that I learned from looking on YouTube." It's like, well, how can you break this down? You have to be able to master those basic strokes.
Andy, could you do a breakdown of a paradiddle, let's say, for maybe a band director who is not a percussionist, and maybe they just like describe what each stroke does, so that we understand how the strokes are applied to an actual rudiment?
Sure. So we have, first with the right hand, we have a down stroke, a tap with the left hand, and then a double with the right. And as that right hand's playing the double, the left hand is doing the up stroke. So down, up. So down, up, right, down, up, right. So it depends on what speed. If you're going at a slower tempo, you're going to play more of a tap. But as you start to speed up, your stroke that's on that isolated note, the second stroke, is going to be more of an up stroke. So, but yeah. So if I'm breaking down the paradiddle, 1 and E, down, double, up, down, double, up. So learning how to stop the stick at the bottom, open it up for the double, and then play that upstroke. And you can do that with the paradiddle. Both hands do the same thing. So you can work on the same thing with the down, double, up, down, double, up. So it's a lot of the rudiments mirror each other with the hands, and the paradiddle is exact example of that.
Okay, I guess one last question was how to build these into some of the band directors that might be in a class without a percussion specialist. Like, how do you get their drummers involved doing like sticks and pads and stuff if the band is doing like long tones or lip slurs or that sort of thing? Do you, I know Robbie and Andy, you guys are at the middle schools, and you're not always able to be there maybe every single day. What are ways that you get your percussionists practicing these strokes and the flams, the double beats, these exercises? How do you get them kind of involved doing that on a daily basis. Maybe if you aren't there, or if the wind player is having to keep those percussionists in the same room as their wind counterparts, something like that. Is there a way to?
Yeah, I mean, like that's where you have a list of those rudiments and maybe even the breakdowns, which I'm sure we can even provide for you too as well. But that having those breakdowns and having them play that to concert F or to the F descending or whatever you're doing there for that day, down the full stroke, downstroke, tap stroke, upstroke. You can play that until they're blue in the face. I mean, that's literally their concert F. But if you want to get them more engaged on that side of things, having them play the breakdowns for each one of those each day. I like to have a kid play bass drum on the quarter notes instead of using a metronome, because like I think kids, just the ability to keep time for the ensemble is essential, and you'll find so many kids, but you'll find students that can't do that, and until it's their responsibility to do it. And we want them to be able to hold time, and they'll hold time for the other group who's playing the exercises. Or the breakdown of the day. How about that? You just call it the breakdown of the day, and just playing downstroke, upstroke, downstroke, upstroke, downstroke, upstroke, whatever you're doing with the band exercise-wise that day. Say, hey kids, we're going to repeat this 4 times. There you go. And then you figure that out. Today, on Monday, we're doing letter A. Tuesday we're doing letter B, which is the left hand. Wednesday we're doing letter A, which is the right hand, and then Thursday and Friday is putting them both together. And then you put them together on Thursday and Friday. So sequence it to where they're working, isolating it on Monday and Tuesday hand to hand. Put it together, and then maybe even do the second speed instead of just quarter notes, maybe eighth notes on Friday. That to me helps sequence it in a way that's meaningful, and it's also working both right hand and left hand coordination.
Cool. All right. I think that's it, gentlemen. Well, I appreciate everybody joining us, and after TMEA, we'll post a copy of this Zoom precursor, and hopefully it will provide some information for those band directors who will need to incorporate these things. And if you have any questions about any of those for Dr. Meyer or Robbie, Andy, or if I can help at all, we will post it on the Percussion Solutions page, and you can hit us with any questions, follow up there, and hopefully we'll get those answered for you. So appreciate you gentlemen being here.
Thank you.
Thanks everybody.